Hi everyone, welcome to the ASUS Graphics channel. We've got another exciting stream today. Today we're actually going to be highlighting some of the stuff from Computex. For those of you who have not gotten a chance to review some of the news, couple new exciting products coming out actually, with the ROG Matrix finally making a return from the 20 series, and another card called the MEGALODON. It's an RTX 4070 and it's a concept piece. So we'll get to that soon. And then we're going to have our other typical updates this week as well, just about some drivers, new games coming out, etc. So happy to have you all here. I see Michael here's joining. Awesome to see you. Thanks for joining in as always. So let's go ahead and get started with everything. First up, we're actually going to have the driver update that we normally do. And this one, for any of those of you who have been following any kind of gaming news, you should be aware that Diablo 4 is out now, and that's what this specific driver is for. So as always, even if you're not playing the newest games, it's always recommended to update your drivers because you can actually often get some benefits in previous games, whether it's bug fixes, sometimes performance improvements, or something that's been fairly typical lately is Nvidia is adding DLSS 3 and DLSS 2 support to prior games. So always worth adding those and checking it out, especially with any of those titles that have some high replay value to them. So let's go ahead and take a look at that new bit of info. So this is as stated, NVIDIA's newest driver release. It is 535.98. There is a recent hotfix to update a couple other things, but this will give you the main bit of information. Again, it's game ready driver for Diablo 4. That's the big title right now. DLSS 3 support, reflex support. It's got it all. I actually haven't gotten a chance to play myself just yet, but I'm hoping to boot it up and start making my way through this weekend, because we will actually be doing a stream with Nvidia next week for this title. So you guys will get to see a little bit of gameplay, especially some 4-player co-op. JJ's also going to be able to join in on that, so stay tuned for that. That's supposed to be Wednesday. Got a couple questions. So the ASUS, will we have a dual for the 4070 Ti? As of right now, there aren't any plans, but I mean, as you can see from the Computex announcements, we are frequently adding new models. So not to say it's not a possibility. We'll see if the dual line extends into the 4070 Ti area. Lightning, if you're looking for this specifically for a like a smaller form factor card, we do have the ProArt 4070 Ti. and that's worth taking a look at as it is a slimmer and shorter card than some of our other models. Back to the drivers though. So again, the main thing for this one's going to be Diablo 4. That's really what it's all about. For some old school fans, you might have seen that System Shock recently got relaunched with uh, kind of like an update for all the new systems to play. So it's not just like an HD update or something like that. It's actually a full remake and based in the Unreal Engine 4. I haven't got to play this one myself either, but have seen some of the gameplay and pretty hyped about it, especially since I've been a fan of some of these kinds of games and didn't get to play the first one myself. So, in a title that I'm excited for. So, this will also give you the game ready driver for that as well. Now, no really other gaming updates for this week. Again, Diablo 4 is the big one. I will quickly touch on sales and promos. For anyone who's not already picked up a card, and especially if you're running on something like a 10 series or even some 20 series and older, we are currently running a ton of promos on our RTX 30 series. So, like 3060 and 3060 Ti especially, you can find some really good deals available on like Amazon and on our ASUS store. So if you're looking for like a highly competent 1080p card or potentially even looking into some 1440p options depending on what you're playing and you're not yet sold on like DLSS 3, RTX 30 series is going to be a great option for you. You'll get that, stock rasterized performance out of it, and you'll still have DLSS 2 and things like reflex as well. So an awesome value there to be had, especially for a lot of these titles. Like, you know, while you can get Diablo 4 for free still with an RTX 4070 or up purchase, so 4070 Ti, 4080, 4090, you can also buy something like one of the RTX 3060, say, duals or tough cards on sale and put those savings towards getting Diablo 4 or, another game or games of your choice. So highly recommend checking those out while there's still stock available. So that's kind of the brief intro of news for everything. Um, the exciting news for this week is definitely going to be the new Computex cards. So first up, we've got the ASUS ROG Matrix. And now, for those of you who have followed along since at least the 20 series, there was the 2080 Ti Matrix. And for that particular model, it was a fully encased all-in-one cooler built into the graphics card cooler and shroud itself. So definitely something very revolutionary at the time. Now, we've once again launched another Matrix card, this time as the RTX 4090. Now, you'll immediately notice that the cooling solution is not fully contained within the card this time. However, something that's going to be setting this card apart is that it's going to be the first to feature liquid metal thermal compound coupled with everything else. So this really is pushing an absolute like top of the line cooling solution. So you've got your 360 AIO in there, you've got the thermal compound, being liquid metal this time instead of the typical one that you would find. So really stoked to see what kind of temperatures we're going to get and how people are able to push the clock speeds and everything on this just out of the box. This right here, I've mentioned before, I am not an overclocker. I'm all about that like simplicity and just is it getting the job done for me. But this card right here, if you're someone who likes to tinker around and want to play around with overclocking, this will be an excellent option for you, especially with things like our GPU tweak software. So no no information yet on when that will be available, and no information just yet on pricing or anything. But stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll have something soon for you. And aside from that, from my own personal standpoint, I just love the design of it. I've mentioned this in other streams, but I'm a huge fan of how the aesthetics are. And this right here is just, it's beautiful to me. Um, I love too that we've decided to not go with this typical like fully enclosed shroud. You can actually see in this area right here, kind of in the center to the left of the diagonal line, that's actually see through, and you can see the tubing there, and that this whole chamber on that kind of second part in the end, that's actually hollowed out, so you've just got the frame. And then while not visible on our page yet, for anyone who's been following along with some of the Computex news, you've probably seen some additional shots of this. And there will be on the side some logo and branding and this kind of like RGB lit bezel. So I know that it's been mentioned a few times in some of the previous streams that people were hoping for maybe a little bit more RGB and something that wasn't just the like Republic of Gamers text lit up. This is your answer for that. So this is going to have more lighting on the side, plus more lighting on the actual front of the card. And while it won't be, say, fans lit up, um, this is definitely a completely different aesthetic overall. So something like our Hyperion, which has multiple cooling sections, plus pairing it with like the RG Maximus Hero, or for anyone who actually has, say, like the Z690 or even Z590 Glacial board, the aesthetics here actually match really well to those on top of it. And while sure, this in those instances wouldn't be applicable to putting into the loop that currently exists, don't think you're going to have any issues cooling this when you've already got liquid metal and a high-end 360 AIO on it. So you're going to be set there temperatures wise. This will be able to fit into those types of systems as well. Seems we have a couple questions about it. So, is this liquid metal solution any different from other AIO when liquid metals were used? So, I can't speak to those specifically. I'm not exactly sure what products you may be referring to. Um, think of this as if a user were to add the liquid metal themselves, though also keep in mind we have things like our auto extreme manufacturing process. So you're going to be having this done to a very high level of quality standard and making sure you know that the liquid metal is properly and evenly applied. So you're taking some of the DIY necessity out of using liquid metal and the risk given that liquid metal itself is conductive. Question on if it's gallium, I'm actually not sure on that, and I don't know that something like that's even finalized just yet either. Keep in mind that because this was just shown at Computex, nothing is inherently set yet for it, other than obviously the overall design should probably stay pretty close to this. But some things like the liquid metal, for example, that could potentially change from whatever was used. So once this is actually ready for full launch, I imagine we'll have some of that information available to provide. Another comment from Michael. Would love to see 90 or 45-degree neck connections used instead of straight out of the end. Um, can definitely understand where you're coming from with that, especially just being able to angle the tubes a little bit more. But keep in mind that's one thing with AIOs is that um, you're only going to be able to rotate tubes so much. You can see it on, say, like the standard CPUs, well, they'll always have like the 90-degree tubes coming out of it, that you're very limited on the range of motion just from them touching into each other as you rotate those fittings and the tubes themselves. Also, keep in mind that obviously this card, like any these days, are designed to be either in vertical or the standard horizontal orientation. And depending on how, say, 90-degree tubes are done, that could really limit the positioning. So think about if you've got it mounted vertically, which way do you do the 90-degree tubes? Because if they're faced towards the back of the card, then once you mount it vertically, you could have conflicts and interference with, say, the motherboard and whatever's to the right of the motherboard area. If you face them the other way, then you start running into limitations when it's mounted in a standard orientation. Same can apply with 45-degree tubes as well, plus the actual routing the tube itself. So totally understand that, but it would require a lot of additional probably, I would say, engineering into the card to enable something like quick disconnects, which by themselves also create a lot of other inherent difficulties. So I'd say that's the decision behind why to go with just the straight tubes is because of product compatibility. Small display. Yeah, so I'm almost a little bit surprised we didn't put a display on this, given that they've become a lot more kind of popular. But for me personally, there are a lot of displays already on a lot of products. It's pretty easy to get it on some of the like motherboards, for example, that you would probably pair this with, or AIOs from us, like our Ryu 3 and the Ryujin 3, for example, and then like our Maximus Hero or Maximus Extreme motherboards. They all also have screens on there. So from a personal standpoint, I'd say you start to run into, is it needed? And again, especially on a product like this, where if you put it on the side of the card, it might not be visible when it's vertically oriented, which is becoming much more popular these days. And same for if you put it on the back or the front, you're going to have potentially limited visibility of it. Whereas an AO or motherboard is almost always still visible, regardless of how you're building the system. So that's kind of a brief overview of it. Obviously, because it just launched at Computex, there's not a ton of information we can provide just yet. So again, stay tuned for more. Now, the other card that got shown off, and this might be of more interest to some people, though I don't know if it's a product that we will offer yet or soon, because it is a concept piece. But that is the Megalodon RTX 40 concept. And we actually don't even have a product page for this. Again, it's a concept, but there's definitely been quite a bit of commentary mentioned about it online. And we've done similar products like this before, but they were on the motherboard side to start. And now we've actually moved this ideology and concept into the graphics card as well. So there's been a lot of discussion about connectors, especially with the 12-volt high power connector that came out with the RTX 40 series. So what if you didn't have that type of connector and you didn't have cables at all? This actually would require a full set of gear between the motherboard and graphics card, but it actually utilizes an additional PCIe type of connector to slot into the motherboard and provide the power it needs. Part of one of the reasons why this is a RTX 4070, start with the concept, because you're going to run into drawing that much power through the motherboard and everything else versus just what I believe is 75 watts for the primary slot. So, whoops, one moment. Oops, apologies, guys. Technical issue for just a moment. Anyways, continuing. So this is going to be kind of that removing all the cables aspect. And that's the whole premise behind the Megalodon concept and the associated motherboard that we've used with it at the show. So you can actually see here where it's slotted into the motherboard, it's running, it's being used. And this is the question, like, how do you guys feel about this kind of stuff? There's been a trend where, not just for the specific connector itself, but in general, what to do with cables, and cleaning up the system and everything like that. So you've seen some motherboards are starting to feature, like I said, a 90-degree connector on the side that routes cables more directly. And you've also seen with like cable mods adapter where they even have 180-degree ones that can wrap the cable fully behind the graphics card. So you're showing off a lot less cables as well. So what do you guys think about that? Like, are you like Team Pro Cable? You want to see it as an aspect to the system? Are you like Team Hide the cables? Like, what do you feel about this? Michael's asking about the power rating for it. So I don't know about this type of connector. Um, what exactly like your power rating is. Also keep in mind like this is definitely the like in design work in progress type stuff. So I don't know that there is necessarily like a set limit on potential power rating there. If this is something related purely to just how much space is available on the motherboard, like maybe you just need a slightly larger connector. Um, so unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, and like I don't know the specifics behind this, but hopefully soon we'll start to get some more information about like how this type of design can work and what it may be able to function up with. I mean, obviously already you're running a 4070 off of this, which granted a 4070 is not the most highest power draw card, especially given how power efficient the RTX 40 series is. But an RTX 4070 itself is also no slouch. So you're already getting into the realm of where you're running a very powerful card, regardless of the power draw itself. Future design is totally wireless. I mean, I know you're like a little bit joking about that, but there is the chance that not soon, but maybe even within the next decade, the only cable you have is going to be the cable to like plug in the power supply and that everything else is wireless in some way or is like directly connecting to the PCB. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves to me, regardless of whether you're like pro for it or not. I'm actually personally I love the idea behind it, but I also love having the cables as an option to kind of personalize and tailor certain aspects of the build as well. So I'm like, I got mixed feelings on it right now. We'll see how that evolves as like more of these types of concepts become available and more products are available, and it continues to be refined. A change to a new industrial standard, I mean, there's definitely the chance for that. It does require a lot of integration between parts. So I guess we'll see how feasible it is. Um, but I do agree. I think even if it's not like my preference currently, I always love seeing things of this nature adopted to give users more options. I mean, part of why I got into PC DIY is because it lets you do what you want with the system. So having that there for others is always a benefit to me. Question from earlier: can you use the Pro Art 47 Ti for gaming? Absolutely. Um, at the end of the day, it is still a 4070 Ti. Um, nothing stops it from functioning like any other 4070 Ti. So while it may not have quite the same cooling as, say, like the Strix cooler, for example, it's still going to perform well enough um, for the cooling aspect, and the performance itself is going to be the same as other 4070 Ti's. Um, so you're not going to have any issues there. If you want to game off a 4070 Ti, go for it. And if you pick one up within the next 2 days, you can even get Diablo 4 free with it. So you can play Diablo 4 on your Pro 4070 Ti as much as you want to. Yeah, I'm. I will be curious to see if within the next couple decades or so, it's just like everything in the house is running wirelessly. I think it'll be a bit crazy, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, that's kind of the coverage over those. I do also want to make a special mention for a card that we showcased in a recent stream, the Tough 4090 OG. That is going to be available finally before too long. Pricing currently is set at $17.99 for that, by the way. And also for those of you who haven't seen some of the more recent news, the RTX 4060 Ti series is also out. And if you're looking for something to get into like high refresh 1080p gaming, and even solid 1440p gaming, with the exclusion of maybe running ray tracing in some games like Cyberpunk, I'm also going to mention like we've got the 4060 Ti in dual starting at the $399.99 MSRP. This is going to be available in the black and in the white model. And then for those of you who are either on the tough or Strix kind of ecosystem of parts, we've got these available as well. The tough OC model starts at $459.99, and the Strix is going to be priced at $489.99. So both of those are also available as well. And like I said, it won't come with Diablo 4. That bundle's exclusive to the 4070 and up. But these are still definitely excellent options, especially if you're wanting to make use of DLSS 3 or Reflex, things of that nature. You can, as always, go check benchmarks out for what you need. But high refresh 1080p and like solid 60 fps plus on ultra settings for 1440p is all going to be available there to you. Something to keep in mind as well is one uses the prior generation 8-pin power connector, and 4060 Ti's are super power efficient, so you're almost guaranteed that unless you're coming off like GTX 1050 or something, that you're not even going to need to like update your power supply. And if you're running any like decently new, decent CPU, then you're also not going to really need to worry about upgrading that aspect of it, because you're not going to be bottlenecking a 4060 Ti if you're not using, a 13900K, say, unlike 4090 that can actually start to get some benefits from those higher end CPUs. So looking at an overall value proposition between the 4060 Ti and the sales on the 3060 series, 3000 series, including the 3060s, you've got a lot of good options right now to get into gaming, or maybe experience some new tech and boost your performance in some games, especially at like 1080p and 1440p. And the 4070 OC edition play AAA game smoothly in 4K resolution. The answer is dependent upon the game you're playing. There are a lot of games that, yes, it absolutely can. If you're trying to run Cyberpunk in 4K with RTX on, no, that particular example's almost relegated to a 4090 or 4080 with some settings turned down a little bit. So I'll always highly recommend pick your top 3 or 4 games that you're spending the bulk of your time in, or a game that is at least a good example of the types of games you play. So whether that's real-time strategy, action adventure, whatever, and go check out the benchmarks for them and base it upon what you play. For example, I play a lot of like indie pixel games and stuff. I currently use a 3070, and it runs a lot of stuff that I play perfectly fine at 4K. There's some games where it'd be a little bit nice to have some improved performance, but even that's getting me by perfectly fine at 4K 60 or higher. So definitely determine what you're wanting to use it for to play with, and then just check out some reviews. But in general, yeah, 4070 is going to run most games at 4K without an issue. Max best resolution for Cyberpunk on a 4070 Ti. If you're not doing ray tracing, then if I remember correctly, 4K is perfectly fine, especially with DLSS 3 support. I can't remember if it's like fully maxed settings excluding ray tracing, or if it's like a half notch down from ultra. And that's something to keep in mind too, is that a lot of reviews do like fully ultra settings, and you may have some settings in there that are like shadows on super ultra high when they only need to be on high, and you can't really tell a difference. Or, you're running um, anti-aliasing at like 32 times when past 8 times you're not going to see a difference, especially when you start getting like 4K resolution. Some of those anti-aliasing texts become far less noticeable when implemented comparative to some lower resolutions. So always keep that in mind as well, that when you're looking at reviews, it may say, 63 FPS cyberpunk at 4K, but that's at maxed out settings oftentimes, and maxed out settings versus, half a notch down or one notch down can be a huge difference in the actual performance, with little to no noticeable impact on the quality of the visuals. So Michael, for that particular question, I'm pretty positive you'd be fine with a 4070 Ti if you're not trying to turn on like RT overdrive. But again, just do double check what settings and stuff for that, especially if you are wanting to use like RT overdrive. I'd recommend probably at least a 4080, but looking more to 4090 for that. Yeah, that's another good thing to point out too, is that, default NVIDIA settings and stuff is gonna offer you a lot of times just optimized out of the gate if the game's supported, and they do continue to add more and more of those as well. Yeah, so, it's the Tough OG, Michael. We talked about it recently. It actually uses the Tough 3090 Ti, that same cooler. So the cooling performance of it will be slightly lower than the new Tough cooler that we use, but it's also a little smaller as well. So if you're like wanted the Tough like 4090 and it just like barely doesn't fit in your case, then you can go with like the OG cooler and it will fit. Um, it's a little bit larger than the ProArt card, but that's also only available in the 4080 and 4070 Ti. So for size restrictions like small form factor, the Tough OG can definitely be an option for you. So that kind of covers it for the cards. Does anyone else have any questions real quick about the like new cards or anything like that? Not, we'll go ahead and move to our spotlight. So we've actually got a little bit of it's a new build from Josh J in the ASUS PCDIY group. Again, anyone that's there, highly recommend to go join the group. You can see a lot of awesome build and stay up like on all the latest news and stuff. JJ is extremely active there as well. And Josh J is part of this group, and he put together this awesome build. So you can see we've got our Maximus series motherboard in here, and he's running a white, red, and black themed setup, which I'm a big fan of. That's actually what my first like real custom PC was built around. Still have a high fondness for it. Very, very cleanly done on the cable routing for both the AIO. You can see he's using the like Velcro straps here to keep everything nice and tidy. And again on the um, graphics card power cables as well. And then he's got this nice mix of white and red set on RGB. So just, a typical clean build, and running at least, an RTX 3080 here. So last gen card, but gonna have more than enough power for most anything these days. So this is just a nice, awesome, like high end build. So kudos to Josh for putting together this beauty. A couple more questions. So, currently, no specific ETA on the white Hyperion case. Um, and you said 4090. I'm going to assume the Matrix 4090. The white Strix 4090 is already out. You'll just have to, keep an eye out for it to be in stock. Um, Hopefully, before too awfully long, we'll have some info on the white Hyperion. Uh, Keep in mind the one Hyperion's already launched, so hopefully the white's not too far away. So stay tuned for that. As far as favorite card, ooh, I'd probably say my current favorite is very close between the white dual, just because I love how well that styling pairs with the prime board, which I got one sitting right here. So the space design, this kind of like futuristic space design on the Prime series motherboard, I was a huge fan of as soon as it came out. And being able to combine that with the dual cards now that they share that same design language, I think it's gorgeous. I think it's a simple but gorgeous design aesthetic. Otherwise, I'd have to say the White Strix is a close second contender. Um, I'm actually most fond of it with the Z690 Formula motherboard, but also like the white, Strix Z790A. It's a great pairing, and I love that when running like the kind of white and silver and these lighter colored setups, the lighting to me pops a little bit more and you can see more of the design elements on the card versus a black build such as Josh's where some of it starts to blend in a little bit if you don't have sufficient lighting in the case to kind of highlight all the products. So that's why I've been such a big fan of it. And that'll probably be a setup that I end up with towards later in the years, either the Prime and Dual or a white Strix setup. So those are definitely favorites. I do like the Matrix as well. I love the design of the actual card itself. So that might also be a possibility. If we somehow had a Matrix Moonlight, I would be finding a way to like get that right now. Like I'd fly myself to HQ and see if I can like get one because that would be a dream. Um, I don't know about more this year. I do know that we will continue to support white motherboards and depending on demand and stuff, especially for like North America, there may be more options that can come around because we do actually have a Strix-G that's in white. So we've got an MATX white Strix board. Um, but Micro ATX hasn't been as popular in North America as ATX cases. So it's not something that we've offered here yet, even though it is a product that ASUS itself has. So that's definitely a possibility. There will be more options in the future. Day one is the 47 dual C and B760M top. Yeah, definitely gonna be a solid combination there. So because of the more kind of simplistic black design, especially kinda, in a normal horizontal orientation, you're gonna have, um, like, still good aesthetics that pair with that. So that's always been my big thing is the aesthetics and just kinda tying everything together and making it look pretty, like, that's what gets me hyped about a lot of this stuff, even aside from, like, the performance and everything. So do we have any other, questions for today? It's gonna be just a kind of a short stream to get you guys updated on everything. Alright, guys, well, thanks everyone for joining in for the short stream. Just again, remember we've got the ASUS graphics channels on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So stay tuned for content from those. To stay update for like sales and promos, new drivers coming out, new game launches, new game and promo bundles. Again, you got a couple days left to pick up a new 40 series card if you want to grab Diablo 4 from that. Also, if you have already gotten a card recently, make sure you get your free bundle for that, or at least get the code to pass off to a friend. So I think so. We've got Michael asking about the Raikiri Pro. Would the final driver be released? Um, So I'd say like many products, we're going to continue to update drivers over time, so always keep an eye on those. I think there's supposed to be maybe another one before too long. I saw them. I know that there's been some discussion about about launching another driver and potentially doing things like extending the time the screen can be on. So stay tuned for that. I don't have any specific news myself. Hopefully, when JJ's back next week, he might have some additional info with that one. So yeah. Anyways, guys, again, thanks for joining us. Hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy slaying some demons if you're already into Diablo. Might even see you guys on there. Have a great weekend.